Hello and welcome to a new episode of Majlis and Markets with your host Hassan Jivraj. Join us for insightful conversations with leaders in Islamic and global markets. If you enjoy this episode, remember to like, share and subscribe. And don't forget to leave us a rating. You can also follow us on LinkedIn at Majlis and Markets or reach out at hassan@majlisandmarkets.com. In this exclusive episode, we're joined by Omar Ansari, Secretary General of AAOIFI, the global standard setter for Islamic finance. We discuss AAOIFI's role in shaping the industry, its mandate, and why standardization and implementation are important for its future. We also dive into Sharia Standards 59 and 62, exploring their rationale, impact, and what they could mean for the future of the global Islamic finance industry, especially in the sukuk market. Omar Ansari, welcome to Majlis Markets. Great to have you here.
Brother Hassan, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and it's honestly indeed a pleasure and an honor to meet you again virtually, and looking forward to meet you physically again soon, inshallah.
Wa alaikum salam. No, Brother Omar, it's really great catching up with you again. I was just talking to you offline, mentioning how I attended the AOV conference in Bahrain last month, and it was really an honor to attend the conference. And also, you invited me to the supplementary workshops on sukuk, which I was telling you offline also, that it really just amplified to me how much work goes into AOV standards and the sukuk industry. So, no, really grateful to you for coming onto the podcast and also for inviting me to your conference. But Brother Omar, I've invited you on here because you obviously of your position and your position in the Islamic finance industry is quite important. And a lot of people, when I told people I was interviewing you, a lot of people were messaging me or telling me directly that they had a lot of questions for you, and some good, some bad, some positive, some negative. But they really they were really interested in this conversation. But before we get into all of that, Brother Omar, could you give us your early life and your background story?
Thank you very much for this thing. I'm not sure whether everybody will be that much interested in my early life and things, but anyway, just a quick introduction would be beneficial, I'm sure. Brother Hassan, I'm from Pakistan originally. My career, I started with the local firm of Anderson, at Arthur Anderson, which was later merged with EY. So my whole career before joining AOFI was with the single firm. Before merger, it was Anderson, and after merger, it was EY. And to be honest, I never thought of leaving that. I was very happy in my career as a professional accountant. I'm a chartered accountant. I was lucky to be qualified as a chartered accountant at a very young age. And honestly, I became a partner in EY also at a very young age. So that was, all of it was going as a very good career, alhamdulillah. Brother, only thing that actually brought me towards this career, how it changed, was on one side, I was lucky enough to have some initial interaction on audit of Islamic financial institutions in very early life. Obviously, it gives you a little bit of idea. Initially at one point of time, I wanted to be an IT professional, but then I moved to accounting and I loved it. But then there was a moment that I started thinking that accounting profession has certain, from our Sharia perspective, our religious perspective, it has some evils as well. If you are working with a very good organization or very, well-respected audit firm like Big Four organization that I was there, so you may not be getting too much of the fraudulent financial reporting part, but accounting profession is always linked with that fraudulent reporting, tax evasions, and all that. And that was one thing that was hurting me. That what is my career? Okay, I love this job, I love this work, I'm learning a lot, but it came to me, it hurt me. Second thing was, again, at that point of time, what I'm talking about, you didn't have enough opportunities to work without interest if you are in the field of accounting and finance. And interest is everywhere in everything. You audit, you do a job as a finance professional, as an accountant, as a everywhere around you, you are dealing with interest in one or another form. And that was something that, alhamdulillah, I had got some religious understandings in my early life. So this was something like, posing question to myself that, Umar, are you going to have a career in something where you are going to get stuck with interest and you are going to get stuck with maybe, God forbid, fraudulent financial reporting, tax evasion, and all that. And this was something that while I was in my development phase as a professional and in the learning phase, but this was something that started hurting me. And this actually took me towards some basic understanding of Islamic finance, just on an initial learning phase without any actual practical exposure. But as I qualified and became a qualified chartered accountant and became manager in Anderson at that time, uh, I would say, and I would always say that I'm highly inspired by two of my mentors in life. Both of them were our partners in first Anderson and then EY. I don't want to undermine others, but these two, particularly Mr. Bashir Juma, who was not only a chart accountant but also a great mentor, and he is still mentoring a lot of people through his books and his presentations on self and time management and all that. And we shared the same vision about life and understanding that okay, what is haram and need to be avoided. And he was my first mentor. My second mentor was Mr. Ibrahim Sidat, who was the managing partner first of EY in like Anderson and then for EY in Pakistan. And not only this, he was like involved big time in development of Islamic finance industry. And even at that time, he was in AOFI board at that time as well. So these two mentors actually put me on that line. They because Islamic finance was evolving and they wanted actually to work in this area, obviously commercially as well and with objective oriented approach as well. So that is where actually I got inspiration and I got support to move my career choices. So I have been an accountant, I've been an auditor, I have been a consultant, advisor, but there was a time in my career that I started moving my focus towards Islamic finance. And then I was given by EY this opportunity to establish a dedicated Islamic finance advisory, consulting, and assurance department. So this way, through my mentor's support, I was able to develop the initial, a department, and then help developing the industry through the infrastructure that is needed. Because whenever a new industry is evolving, you need to have the consultants, the advisors, and the assurance providers to help develop that industry on the right foundations. And that was the role that we tried to play in Pakistan. In addition, I was involved in a couple of other activities within Pakistan, being part of the local standard development committees at the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Pakistan. ICAP, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Pakistan, did a great job in the late 90s and early 2000s, still early 2010s, in developing Islamic finance practices and developing local standards for that. I was part of certain committees of the central bank, certain committees of the Securities Commission, particularly a very important committee that developed the Takaful rules. In addition, I was involved with the central bank training wing and certain other institutions for providing trainings in Islamic finance. So this, I would say that I would summarize that all that work that I did was somehow I believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has everything for purpose and some of the things are written in your fate. So probably they were all developing me somehow for this job that that I got here. So then obviously it is nearly 10 years nearly 10 years ago that I moved to AOFI from EY, and it was a very difficult decision. You know, you are a partner, you have a good standing in the local market, and you have your family, everything adjusted in a country and moving to another country and all that. It's not easy, but this is where my journey at EY ended and my journey at AOFI started.
Amazing. And brother Omar, you've been at AOFI, I think you said nearly a decade now. And what did you start off doing at AOFI in your first time with them?
Well, AOFI approached me for attending couple of strategy sessions and some initial discussion about how the strategy, particularly at that time, the Secretary General who was there at that time, Dr. Hamid Mira, who worked very great on reviving the AOFI's activities and moving very far at a very fast pace. So at that moment, he initiated some of the strategic exercises, and that was very good, like, for AOFI at that point of time to change the relevant strategies and all that. And that was the time that I was working in Pakistan, and I was working with Saudi Organization for Certified Public Accountants also for the Sharia aspects of accounting standards. So when I presented with AOFI these things in the strategic discussions, Dr. Hamid wanted to involve me a little bit more on the strategic discussions with regard to how the AOFI's accounting standard development approach should go ahead. And then obviously he approached me that obviously we need at AOFI somebody to take forward these technical standard parts to the according to the new strategy, and to develop the new strategy, take it forward at the new at a faster pace and all that. And Alhamdulillah, I would say that I was just discussing with a colleague just a few minutes before this meeting that Alhamdulillah, if you see our new FAS book published, like Financial Accounting Standards book published, so we have completely almost revamped all accounting standards. A little bit like, a little bit chunk is left, but probably within this year or maximum like in a year and a half, that work will be completed. So effectively, we are talking about a decade where we were able to actually revamp the whole accounting standards for Islamic finance, aligning them better with the IFRS. So the main approach at that point of time with regard to the strategy was that how we can improve the quality of AOFI's technical standards, particularly the accounting standards and also the governance standard, and align them with the global best practices, align them with the IFRS and other global best practices, and to come up with something that is acceptable to the regulators, to the industry at large as top quality standards. So the initial, as I mentioned, the initial discussion evolved around the strategy that should be there, but that took it towards AOFI management requesting me to join AOFI, and I joined initially as Assistant Secretary General, and eventually after several years, I was I became in between some time. I remained acting Secretary General as well, but now I'm almost completing 6 years as Secretary General of AOFI. So this, particularly the choice of moving to AOFI for me was, again, commercial considerations have to be there, and we all are having our financial commitments, our families and everything. But if you ask me 10 times, what was your prime consideration of moving to AOFI, I would say that it was, in my personal mind, it was a clear-cut, objective-oriented opportunity that you can help developing the industry in a better way. That was very much at the back of my mind at that time, and I can assure you that majority of our team that is working together here for development of not only accounting, auditing, governance, and Sharia standards, but also working in other areas of operations of AOFI and other areas like capacity building and other standard implementation and others as well. I can assure you that majority of our team shares a very clear vision, a shared vision about AOFI being a strategic opportunity for all of us to work on an objective oriented basis towards development of industry, not only for our earnings here, but also with a very clear mind. We all have it in mind that this is something to do with our akhirah as well. We want to get prepared for life hereafter as well. So to be honest, the biggest the biggest advantage that I felt at that point of time of moving to AOFI, which was a very difficult thing, but that was primarily that I will be able to feel that I'm achieving something for myself, for the society, for the ummah, and also developing something for my life hereafter.
MashaAllah, that sounds really great. Brother Omar, before we get on to AOFI and the standards, I just want to get a take from you. You, being the Secretary General of this organization, what are your responsibilities, and also what does your day-to-day look like in terms of your activities?
Very difficult question, Brother Hassan. When I was just looking at some of the pointers that you shared, I thought this is the most difficult question that I have to answer. Okay. First thing, AOFI is a standard setting organization, but standard setting means that you have to be very professional in doing the main activity, but you need to attach a lot of ancillary activities to that. So as a Secretary General, Obviously, the prime responsibility is as the operational head of the organization, reporting to board of trustees and making sure that the organization runs on a sustainable basis in a professional manner to achieve its objectives. So that is honestly the primary responsibility of the Secretary General. But for me, if you ask me, I'm still the head of accounting, auditing, governance, and ethics standards as well. So what I'm saying does not mean to undermine the efforts of my colleagues, but maybe it is more of my own nature and my own priority that I still remain fully involved in the standard setting process. And so technically, if you divide my time, I would say 25% of my time on average, again, there are days when it will be 100%, but 25% to 30% of my time is focused towards operational affairs of the organization, which means as the operational head of the organization, whatever is needed, including obviously managing the things from the board of trustees and managing the respective committees, managing and supervising the finances, managing the overall operations, keeping an eye on the HR and administrative matters. So that is my sort of like 25 to 30% of my functions. Remaining 75% of the time, I would say that Sharia standards, for sure, as an organizational head, I'm in charge for that. But for Sharia standard, we have a separate team headed by our very respectable brother, Dr. Abdurrahman, who actually is dedicated and designated as secretary to the Sharia board as well. And under him, there is a small team as well. And then on the technical standards, the whole standard setting process that is there, obviously it is supervised for accounting, governance, auditing, and ethics standards by myself. To be honest, while you would say that it is it's not expected from the SG himself, but maybe I personally enjoy more if you ask me to speak as a Secretary General at a Eve conference, obviously that's part of my responsibility. But if you ask me what you enjoy more, is probably when I actually work on development of a standard, which I believe is something which is value adding for the industry, value adding for the society, inshallah, in the long run. And so technically, I remain fully involved in all of these activities. In addition, obviously, the standard setting activity include managing the working groups, managing the board meetings, doing the research work, supervising the research work. Again, I'm not saying whatever I'm doing is everything is done by my hand. Obviously, there is a team and there are some consultants. They are helping. Then there is a whole process of multiple working groups, committees, and board through which the things have to go through. After that, there are public hearings, roundtables, and all that. To some extent, because AOFI works with very limited resources, and to some extent, because I personally enjoy all of it, a lot of these activities are done by myself, like a lot of public hearings, a lot of roundtables, a lot of almost all working groups and almost all board meetings are actually managed by me myself. So it's like, it's honestly a very, very long list of activities. And to be honest, to some extent, it's inhuman as well. I don't want to. I'm not criticizing my bosses. I'm just saying, Alhamdulillah, I normally enjoy all of it.
Yeah, that sounds great, and it sounds like very multifaceted and very busy days you're doing. And Brother Omar, before we get to the standards, for an outsider, like you and I obviously know about Islamic finance and have been involved in the industry for a while, but for an outsider who doesn't know too much about Islamic finance, and you've touched on this just now a bit in your previous answers, but how would you characterize AOFI and AOFI's mandate?
Brother, AOFI is an industry body. Industry body, I'm clarifying because like IFSB, the Islamic Financial Service Board, is a regulatory body, regulators body. And AOFI is initiated or initially formed by the industry. Some of the key industries players in early 1990s, 1991 it was constituted, and 1992 it started operations. Some of the major Islamic financial institutions at that point of time actually initiated it, which are considered our founding members. Central Bank of Bahrain and Bahrain government actually supported it big time to have its primary location. Now, the mandate is to develop standards which are resilient, robust, and and according to the global best practices for the whole Islamic finance industry. We believe in at here. One thing is very important that I would like to say. We believe that Islamic finance is different from conventional finance, and if it was not different, then it was not needed. Let's be honest. Why it came up? Because there were some of the things in the conventional finance which were not considered permissible by Sharia, primarily riba, other prohibitions also. Now, Islamic finance came as a replacement of conventional finance through eliminating the prohibitions and bringing up new type of practices, contracts, and transactions. Now, if the Islamic finance is different, and we agree on this point of time, then obviously it need to have a different set of regulations, standards, and best practices, which should be aligned with the global best practices and the conventional standards, insofar as the characteristics of Islamic finance and conventional are the same. But where the essence of Islamic finance becomes different from the conventional finance, this is where AOFI's role kicks in. And this is the mandate of AOFI to fill in that gap by developing standards for the Islamic finance industry, making sure that it is a resilient industry, robust industry, long-term sustainable industry. It is able to achieve its objectives in line with Sharia principles and rules, and then the best interest of the stakeholders. So this all together, we would say that is the mandate. Now, if you ask me legally, what is our mandate? Legally, our mandate is to develop standards for Islamic finance industry in the areas of Sharia, accounting, auditing, governance, and ethics, and other ancillary matters as well. Obviously, we are not developing right now, but there can be other ancillary matters as well. And this is our primary objective. And the ancillary objective is to perform additional activities which are related to getting those standards implemented and adopted in the market. So it includes standard implementation activities, capacity building activities, and awareness and advocacy activities, which are all part of our overall mandate. So this is like more of our formal mandate that I mentioned.
And Brother Omar, like, how do you guys come up with standards? Is it like you have a bunch of experts, or like do you have like outside people helping you? How does it work?
Brother, we benchmark our standard setting process normally with a global standard setting body. So we benchmark it on a regular basis, like every few years, we go through a strategy exercise in which we compare our standard setting process with other global best practice developers and standard setting organizations. Now, how it happens is that that initially we develop our initial identification of a standard in that is needed in an area that can be done through queries from the market or through global developments. So, for example, if a new IFRS comes up, we need to evaluate that whether that IFRS or its equivalent is needed in Islamic finance. Or if a new product in Islamic finance evolves, we need to see it is needed. Similarly, at times we receive queries from the market which have some issues on the existing standard or need for upcoming standards. So this is how we identify the need. Then we have at the secretariat level, obviously we put it in the plan. We have our three technical boards: Sharia board, accounting board, and governance and ethics board. And with these three boards, we have working groups and subcommittees, etc. And obviously there are additional review mechanisms as well. For example, we have public interest monitoring consultative committee, or we have Sharia committee for review of the accounting and governance standards. Now, every standard has to go through a proper a process flow, which include development of initial preliminary study, development of consultation notes, having some roundtables or surveys, etc. if needed at that point of time. A working group is constituted. That working group reviews all of these things, then recommends to the board. The board initially reviews these things, then we develop an exposure draft of the standard. The exposure draft is published, public hearings, additional roundtables, surveys, etc. are conducted at that point of time. Then the standards are, in case of technical standards, these are reviewed by PIMCC, Public Interest Monitoring Consultative Committee, and the Sharia Committee. Then obviously with the market comments, public hearing comments, and all the comments together, we bring it back to the working group and to the board, eventually by the board finalizing the standard. So this whole process normally takes, even for a small standard, the whole process takes between 8 to 24 months, based on my experience. I'm saying in some cases we have taken even more than 2 years as well, but normally the minimum time that we need is roughly 8 months or so, and in most cases a standard takes between 1 to 1.5 years. Mostly we try to complete the process within 2 years, but in very rare circumstances where there are some additional issues or something, standard may take several years, like the Sukuk Sharia standard exposure draft has already taken 8 years. And it's not, I won't say that it's a delay of 8 years. We need to understand it's a work of 8 years. Like, again, obviously, between the two phases of work at time, there is a little bit gap. But what we are talking about is that some standards take several years. And similarly, at time we start a project comprising of multiple standards at a time, which at times take up to 3 to 5 years to complete the whole project out of it. AOFI works with very limited capacity. Our secretariat team is very limited. We have a couple of consultants working on retainership basis as well. But I would like to mention, and I take pride in saying that AOFI is supported by nearly 450 professionals who work for free for AOFI. We are talking about the board members, the working group members, committee members who are working for free for AOFI, because we all believe in a common cause that this is the industry need to be developed. And AOFI never pays to any of the technical board members for any fee, any working group member. For some consultants, there is a limited fee or honorarium at times, but the main development of standards is done all by volunteers from the industry. We select the most competent people and most relevant people from around the globe who are part of the working groups and boards, and they are the ones who actually provide significant input in developing these standards. So always I say that this is the work of the industry. We at Secretariat are just facilitating it. I can assure you that this is the best brains of the industry that are coming together to develop these standards, and we as Secretariat are just facilitating the whole process.
Brother Omar, why are standards important? I mean, to an outsider who doesn't know too much about Islamic finance, why is harmonization and standardization so important for the industry?
Brother Hassan, this question requires a day of discussion, but let me try to summarize it. Okay. So, first thing, let me give an example. I have a laptop charger which has a specific type of plug. Now, I need to have a socket where this plug can fix in. This is just one example where you need to have standardized practices with regard to the equipment and everything. Now, why it is needed? There are two things here. First is harmony. Harmony is that my plug should be able to fit in the socket. Am I right? So that is harmony. That all the that there are European practice, there is US practice about the types of sockets and all that. So that is where I need a plug and socket to fit in together so that things can work. This is harmony. But secondly, my laptop charger, if the electric supply is not appropriate, it may result in my charger being being destroyed, burned. Even my laptop can get damaged. This is where the quality comes in, that the quality of the socket and quality of the plug are equally important. So when we talk about standardization, standardization includes harmonization and best practices. So on one side, it has to harmonize the practices within the jurisdiction. It has to harmonize the practices across the globe. And on the other side, it has to ensure that the best practices are there. Because if you harmonize based on lower quality, it may still damage the individuals. It may still damage the industry. So what we need? First, harmonization. Making sure that minimum everybody is working in a way that products, services, these are transactions, these are compatible to each other. So if I'm moving from Pakistan to Bahrain, I know that Pakistan adopts AAOIFI Sharia standard. I know Bahrain adopts AAOIFI Sharia standard. It gives me first line of confidence that
Mm.
I can go and open up an account in any of the banks in Bahrain. But for example, I move to UK. The regulator doesn't adopt AOFI standard. We know that individual institutions follow AOFI standard. So here there is something that I need to evaluate, that what set of practices is being followed by this institution where I want to open my account. Now, this thing, consider this thing in a cross-border transaction. Now, there is a bank in Bahrain and there is a bank in UK. They want to trade with each other, do
Mm.
a transaction, investment, sukuk. What happens here? These are the things where we need to understand that standardization is fundamental to ensure that there is interoperability, there is possibility of having cross-border transactions, there is possibility of having confidence in the industry. So for most important thing is confidence in the industry. But I would like to mention that it avoids reinventing the wheel. So even it has benefit for the regulator. Regulator, if each regulator sits and decide, okay, I'm going to make 4,000 pages of regulations. At AOFI, we have nearly 3,000 pages or 3,500 pages of standards. So every regulator stand up and say, oh, we don't believe in a single set of standards and we want to develop our own standards. So they may end up either having below par quality, below quality, like, standards or regulations, or they may end up in duplicating the efforts which are done, like, by AOFI on a global basis, having the best input from across the globe. Now, not only this, brother, you can see people working in different markets. If there are the same set of standards followed, you have access to HR, you have access to IT systems.
Mm.
Again, if every country has a different set of standards, do you think one single IT system can serve all of them? Again, every time there will be problems. Investment confidence. Now, I'm an investor. I want to invest in a country. I want to purchase sukuk. I want to purchase sukuk from UAE market. I want to purchase from US market, so UK market. I want to purchase from Malaysian market. I want to purchase from Saudi market, Pakistan market. How I can have confidence in each one of them? Do I need to evaluate everything again and again? Again, this is standardization itself is a huge thing, but it needs a much more discussion. But I can assure you that standardization helps in harmonization, improving interoperability, improving the transaction possibility between institutions, saves cost on HR, saves cost on technology, encourages investments, across, and particularly cross-border investments. And most important, I would reiterate that they increase confidence of the stakeholders of the industry. So that is where we emphasize again and again that standardization is something that is a key and that must be done at a global level, but at least at the regional level or jurisdiction level.
Speaking of jurisdictions, Brother Omar, like one of the criticisms that people were saying to me about this interview was that AOFI standards, they do good work, but they're not implemented by a lot of people or a lot of countries or jurisdictions. How do you respond to some of these criticisms that, people may adopt your standards fully or partially or not at all?
Brother, I don't have my footprint analysis in front of me, which is available on our website for everybody. In a nutshell, I would like to summarize that globally, at least there are 50 regulators in around 44 countries that adopt AOFI's standards in one or another form, either all or some of them. So we are talking about, an industry which has, which has presence in not 100, 180 countries are not our target market today. 180 countries of the world are, or nearly 200 jurisdiction and countries are maybe target for the conventional standard. For Islamic finance, my target at this point of time is not more than 65 to 70 countries. And out of that 65 to 70 countries, I already have a good enough presence. But that is not enough. And again, my question, if somebody doesn't adopt UFI standards, is it their loss or my loss? I don't get any advantage. No country adopting AAOIFI standard pays if something to AAOIFI. So it's not my loss. Yes, we believe it's a loss of the industry. But for us, we believe that this is something where we need to work with regulators, work with the industry players more and more to increase that thing. But one thing I would like to clarify and emphasize again and again, that people are not actually aware of actual level of adoption of AAOIFI standards. That is actually by far more than lot of people think. So I always suggest have a look at the footprint report, which is available on our website. You will just yourself be astonished to see what is actually the depth of that one. And we have actually provided even country profiles for all these countries where, like, you will find actually the reference of law and or regulations where these things are there. Again, what the level of adoption is, it's not sufficient. It's not enough. We are not saying that we are happy with that. We are just saying is that at this point of time, the majority of the people actually don't understand the real level of adoption. And we are talking about a lot of countries which are already in the process. We are talking about even non-Muslim countries which are in the process. And we hope that this level of adoption in short term will be increasing significantly, inshallah.
Perhaps the most important country of adopting AOFI standards is the United Arab Emirates via its higher Sharia authority, which I believe was established in 2018. It was based at the Central Bank of UAE, and they've made AOFI standards or AOFI standards law in the country if you want to do any kind of Islamic financial transactions. And Brother Omar, if I'm being very candid with you, like a lot of people, like I know AOFI's been there since the 90s, and they've been there writing the standards and doing all this good work. But when you talk to market practitioners, Brother Omar, a lot of people never heard of AOFI. A lot of people didn't realize the depth of the standards. Do you think like a lot of these people don't realize that? I know you guys are trying to get closer to the maqasid of Sharia and to the true principles of Islamic finance, but the way in which Islamic finance today is practiced at the moment, there's kind of like a bit of a conflict or a clash there.
Okay, let me put something that I discussed earlier, brother. At AOFI, we believe Islamic finance is different, and if it is not different, it is not Islamic finance, and it was not needed. It was needed because you need to create difference from conventional. So if you after all these years of effort, nearly 50 years of effort, you end up in something where you cannot distinguish the two, then the question is what exercise this was all for. And now here I have a very controversial comment. I've made this comment several times in public as well, but let me repeat it. Brother, do you think that by merely making a bunch of paper, you can make fool of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's not possible, I can tell you. And I can tell you, you can try to make fool of people through just a bunch of paper without making things actually changing, but that will also not last long. What is needed is true Islamic finance. What is true Islamic finance? For sure, there can be some flexibility with regard to the rigidity of principles. We can assure you that AOFI standards are quite flexible within the limits. So, for example, if we say that there has to be a ownership, our standards at time will accept different forms of ownership and different legal levels of ownership. But if you say that ownership is not necessary, okay, this is not Islamic then. If you say that ownership will never be established, then what is the point in just making fool of people by making a different bunch of papers? We need to understand these things. And I repeat, Islamic finance is different. And my responsibility sitting at AOFI doing this function for the industry is to ensure that the industry is on the right foundations. For that, we are bound to write what is right, to say what is correct and say what is incorrect. Okay, now coming to with regard to some of the flexibility or some of the differences of opinion with regard to the Sharia matters or with regard to other matters related to Islamic finance and Islamic finance and banking. Brother, I can tell you that while we have created significant flexibility within our standards. But yes, it is possible that in some individual jurisdictions, there can be views of scholars different from AOFI. At times, those views will be stricter than us. At times, those will be more flexible and more open. But let me tell you one thing, brother. When you try to develop a standard, and we were talking about the example of plug fitting in the socket. Now, first thing, obviously, you need to have plug and socket mutually compatible. That is one thing. But the second part, you need to make sure that the quality of the socket and plug is good enough to ensure that there is no fire breaking out. This is where our standard comes in. Now, what we do, again, let me ask another question as a standard setter. For example, there is a product which is approved by scholars in one country or maybe two countries, but that is not accepted by scholars in maybe 30 countries. Now, as a global standard development practice that we need to do, we need to bring people on harmony so that plug fits in the plug. If I make my standards based on two countries, which are not accepted by 30 other countries, or maybe 50-50, plug will not fit in. There will be a product, they will say it's AOFI compliant, but others will not be accepting. What we are doing is, if it is AOFI compliant, everybody will be saying, yes, it is fitting in. Yes, there can be some views of some of the scholars beyond that. Okay, I belong to Pakistan. I know a couple of views of scholars in Pakistan who allow something not allowed by AOFI. I know in Malaysia, our brothers follow some of the practices not allowed by AOFI. Okay. Do you think the plug and socket will fit in together? It will never happen. You need to bring a standard setting body to develop standards not based on individual views of scholars or not based on individual view of one of the school of thought or maktabul fiqh. You need to find out what is accepted by almost all mazahib, what is accepted by everybody. So if, for example, Oman says there is no tawarruk allowed. AOFI does not insist you must do tawarruk. AOFI allows that, okay, tawarruk can be done in a need basis and it can be done on case to case, on a need basis and also according to certain strict Sharia principles. So for me, Oman not allowing tawarruk still remains within AOFI because they have taken a stricter view. But the question comes, if Pakistan has a view about one of the items which is not accepted by AOFI, what will happen? Compatibility will go away. So we need to find compatibility. So brother, now let me ask you, how a standard setting body can try to find a consensus for developing some standards which are approved by scholars around the globe and accepted by regulators around the globe without trying to bring in on the common things and moving and keeping the things which are not acceptable for majority outside. This is what we are trying to do.
Brother Omar, perhaps I just want to focus on two standards for today's conversation, probably the most important that people have highlighted to me. I'm not discounting any of the standards you guys have published and are currently discussing, but the first standard, I think, which kind of made you guys or made AOFI more aware, people more aware of AOFI, the non-Islamic finance specialists, was standard Sharia standard 59, the sale of debt. And in 2021, I believe that this was actually implemented in the UAE via the HSA, like I mentioned before. And it kind of, I was reading an S&P report last night from 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, in fact, saying that it led to a drop in sukuk issuances. And, we've had people on the podcast, including rating analysts, bankers, and they mentioned about the tangibility fact in this standard, and they weren't aware. Like, I was aware of the tangibility standard way back in, like, say, 2013, 2014, but like they only heard of it now. But why do you think this standard created a lot of challenges in the sukuk market, particularly in the UAE at the time?
Rather, there were two issues actually that impacted the market big time. One was on the sukuk side that was related to tangibility. The other was on the rollover side for the banking industry. Mostly these were impacting the tawarruk-based transactions. Again, tawarruk, as per AOFI, is never considered to be a routine transaction and not considered to be a general form of Islamic finance. This is considered to be something based on need. Now, let me be honest. Brother, Sharia does not allow trade of debt. This is understood like at a value other than like, the par value. This is understood from beginning. It was no new thing brought in by AOFI. Am I right? The core
Mm.
principle was already there. The only thing was that we clarified a few matters that this way, this interpretation need to be applied. So first, I would say there was no new thing. Even for I would say that the 50% thing and all that in case of Suku was originally not there. Even like that actually standard 59 brought in flexibility which was not there. People were taking that flexibility of 33%, which applies to the company, which does not apply to Suku. Now, as we understand, Sharia distinguishes between a company or an entity that has an ongoing business versus a bundle of assets. So the point is that FAS 59 said that bundling of asset in this manner is should be subject to a proper like a tangibility criteria, which was originally not there. The company tangibility criteria was being applied by majority, and it said that what needs to be done is that you need to make sure that you do not use the bundle of assets just as a ruse or a hila for creating a trade of debt. Now, the point is, my dear brother, there is a specific prohibition by Sharia. Non-compliance of that prohibition tantamounts to riba. And we are saying we are doing riba-free banking and riba-free finance. And we do a structure in which we do the same thing for which we are claiming we are not doing. This is where the Sharia scholars actually took a stronger view that no, if you want to do it the right way. The second issue related to that was on rollovers. Again, that was since beginning in our standards. So effectively, FAS 59 even it got flexibility in a few things. Like for example, in case of companies, there was a 33% ratio which was removed by FAS 59, Sharia Standard 59, mentioning that in case of ongoing purchase and sale in case of an institution, that ratio does not apply. So there was additional flexibility as well. But let's be clear, brother. Yes, we know this is a problem and we know that this creates problem for the market. But why it created problems for the market? Why it was happening at the first moment, first stage? Why we just want to replicate the conventional products and call them Islamic? Let's ask ourselves this question as well. And okay, brother, I'll take you back to 1998. Now, sorry, 2008 crisis. After 2008 crisis, at that time, AOFI Sharia Board issued, Sheikh Taqi, our chairman Sharia Board issued a resolution about identifying significant issues that were there in the Sukuk market. Everybody said Sukuk market will die. It did not die. Okay, you have heard the analysis of certain experts in 2021 that because of Sharia Standard 59, Sukuk market will die. Did it actually die? No, brother. Only thing is we need to find the right structures. We need to find the right products. The standards are not there to let the industry die. Standards are there to make sure that the industry is established and on the right foundations, on a resilient and robust basis, in line with the core principles, in order to ensuring that the stakeholders' confidence is there, not deceiving the stakeholders that we do something and say something, and ensuring that the long-term interest of the industry is safeguarded, although some people may feel that it is impacting their short-term commercial interest. But I can assure you that this Sharia Standard 59 has brought in significant improvements in the market practices. Market has not died, and inshallah it will not die. We are committed that we'll be bringing improvements to the industry in due course, inshallah. Sharia board of AOFI is doing a great job. It is represented by the most senior scholars around the globe, and they are sitting with those institutions. They are advisors of those sukuk. They know it well that yes, this is a challenge, but they are sure that inshallah that those challenges we can overcome.
Brother Omar, for skeptics or critics who were relaying their thoughts to me, do you think that AOFI standards do take into consideration commercial viability of Islamic finance?
Okay, brother, let me be very honest on this part. We take commercial viability as a very significant consideration, but not at the cost of Sharia compliance. That is my answer. So yes, we want commercial viability to be there. But if you tell me, brother Hassan, that commercial viability is if you just do a conventional bond and put the name of Sukuk, sorry, this is not we are there for. Yes, we believe that for some time, you will have challenges in changing the products, finding the right structures, resolving the issues raised by the standard. But we are assured that, like I just gave you example of S59, or SS59, Sharia Standard 59, that we heard a lot that industry will die. But I can assure you that the numbers are good. And inshallah, the numbers will be good after SS62 as well.
Yeah, I mean, like for a brief period, for about 6 months, I think the primary Sukuk issuance dropped.
Because you need some time to restructure the things. That's it. You find better solutions and more compliant solutions.
Yeah, yeah. Just leading on to Sukuk, on Brother Omar, as we bring the podcast to a close shortly, because I don't want to take too much of your time. The big one I think everyone's been talking about over the past 6 months is Sharia Standard 62. I know you and I spoke about it when we were at the conference last month and also at the workshop as well. A lot of people mentioned about the standard, and we went through some of the standards from Standard 62 at the workshop. And it kind of, Brother Omar, if I'm being very honest, it kind of shows to me like this bit of inflection that Sukuk are supposed to be a profit and loss sharing instrument and like equity like instrument, but it's kind of highlighting the fact that the standard is kind of showing Sukuk is more like of a debt instrument in the market. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Brother Hassan, I would try to slightly correct your view about it, if you allow me. We are not saying that Sukuk must be profit and loss sharing. We are saying that it is a Sharia requirement that you need to take risk and reward of the underlying assets if you want a real transaction. Now, so it means that you can still have structures which are not debt, but like they are virtually fixed return. So, for example, Ijara Sukuk is very well accepted around the globe, and if you do it properly, nobody objects on that. If the only you need to meet the Sharia conditions on that. Now, Ijara Sukuk, the point is very simple that Ijara Sukuk can have a fixed rate or variable rate according to whatever structure you have as per Sharia. Only in case of a genuine loss of asset and but counterparty not fulfilling the purchase undertaking, that is the only situation where it is not fixed return. And this is the minimum level of risk you need to take in order to make it Sharia compliant. This is one example. Now, we are not saying that you go for Mudarba Sukuk all the time. No, we are not insisting that make it all profit and loss sharing Sukuk. We are saying that Sukuk should be, now you can have Salam Sukuk, you can have Istasna Sukuk. There are different situations. Now, Salam Sukuk credibility will be an issue. Istasna Sukuk can have some situations. The point is, what I'm trying to make is that Sharia does not insist that all Sukuk must be profit and loss sharing. But Sharia insists that all Sukuk must have a risk and reward of the underlying assets or business. So these are two different things, which means that without taking risk and reward, and brother Hassan, if you allow me, when we have the first class of first session of training for any new student or conventional banker about Islamic finance, we say Islamic finance requires risk and reward. Am I right? Because that is what is the difference. This is what makes a conventional transaction to Islamic. A lot of people talk about these things, and allow me to go a little bit on side, but let me, it's a side discussion, but let me focus. Risk and reward does not necessarily mean it's a profit and loss sharing thing. It can still be a fixed return thing. Again, now fixed return, some of the fixed return things that are converted into a debt are not allowed to be traded at value other than par value. And if you bundle them, you need to create a bundle where the majority is tangibles. This is the condition by Sharia. So try to understand that we are not saying that make all profit and loss based sharing based sukuk. But yes, a sukuk is not conventional bond. I repeat and repeat and reiterate that sukuk is not conventional bond. So if sukuk does not relate to the risk of underlying asset, then it is not sukuk. Then you are trying to make fool of people, and you are nauzubillah, trying to make fool of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To try to understand, we do not insist that all structures must be profit and loss based. We said all the Sharia compliant structures that are available, you can use any one of them. Some of them are profit and loss sharing based, some are not. But if they are not profit and loss sharing based, they may have tradability and other considerations as per Sharia. Consider what is required by Sharia. It is, and again, our Sharia board is not the one who defines Sharia. Sharia has been defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by his messenger 1400 years ago. That these are the continuing principles. There is no disagreement on those principles. Only thing is how those principles are applied in the current day finance. And this is where our Sharia board is playing its very important and due role. And we believe that this practice of these standards that are being developed are going to bring long-term improvement in the industry, significantly increase the confidence of the industry, and obviously they are going to bring in, inshallah, the desired objectives of growth of Islamic finance that are needed, inshallah. Those will, inshallah, be achieved through them.
Brother Omar, just on this point about sukuk, I think there's some evidence to suggest that 90% of sukuk in the market are asset-based, not asset-backed. And traditional literature on Islamic finance, specifically with sukuk, preach that it's asset-backed. But if you look at the market, and I even highlighted this at the workshop to the instructor, and even he admitted that it's true that a lot of these sukuk in the market are asset-based, which by function like a conventional bond. I mean, this standard is basically saying that you got to make it more Sharia compliant, right?
Brother Hassan, you answered, your question contains the answer itself. Okay. So you yourself said that all the contemporary literature on Islamic finance says assets, sukuk have to be asset backed. Our Sharia standard says the same thing. We don't distinguish between asset based and asset backed. We simply say that sukuk has to be, the returns on sukuk should be based on the underlying assets or underlying business. That's it, which makes it asset backed. Now, the question is, if people have tried to create something in the name of sukuk, which is not having the risk of the underlying asset, if you ask me, Umar, forget about AAOIFI Sharia board. What is this? My question will be, when I started reading about Islamic finance on day one, it said risk and reward. Where is the risk and reward? And again, I can assure you that 99.9% of the sukuk will never have a situation where you go out of the identified virtually fixed revenue streams. But that 0.1% or less 0.01% risk, that is what makes it halal. And if that is not there, then honestly, I can tell you that whatever name you give it, it would not be. Because again, answer was in your own question. I don't want to put answer from my side. Answer was from your own side. That a lot of structures are like conventional bond. For whether it is acceptable or not, who is to decide? The most senior scholars who are sitting in all the country Sharia boards, central Sharia boards of the countries, largest institutions of the countries, They are sitting together at AAOIFI Sharia board. They are trying to find the core principles that need to be applied. Maybe anybody who thinks that they don't understand the market dynamics, if anybody thinks our Sharia board is enemy of the industry, on a lighter note, they all will lose their jobs if the industry goes down. Try to understand. They are doing something which is important for the resilience, for the strength, for the sustainability, for the long-term growth, for the stakeholders' confidence. They are not doing anything to fail the industry. I can tell you, majority of the people who are having their concerns may go back to conventional and do conventional bonds if sukuk market goes down. But I can assure you, our Sharia scholars will not be going to have jobs in the conventional bond market. They are doing it independently. They are doing it according to the objective, according to the eventual objectives that we need to achieve for Islamic finance industry. Their jobs will be at risk if industry goes down. They are taking that risk.
Yeah, Brother Omar, there was a letter that was sent to AOFI in the end of August when the first round of feedback from the market, and it was an 8-page report. I managed to get a see of the report, and it was commissioned by a bunch of banks and law firms and other advisors in the UAE, which was addressed to AOFI, and it kind of highlighted some of the commercial risks as it pertains to Standard 62, things like legal title ownership, where, for example, in Dubai, you're subject to stamp duty if you're doing a real estate transaction, and other commercial risks and due diligence risks. I mean, are you not worried that this standard, however it's implemented in the UAE, it could create a two-tier or a fragmented market?
Actually, first thing about that comment letter that we received, we highly appreciate the effort done by the experts, and we highly appreciate receiving comments like this, because this actually makes us more, knowledgeable about what the real problems are and try to resolve them. As yourself, again, some of your questions include answer yourself. You said they were mainly talking about commercial considerations. They were not primarily talking about Sharia considerations or difference of Sharia views. So again, I'm not saying that commercial consideration means that we are not going to look at it. Our Sharia board is going through a process in which these comments are reviewed along with other comments received during multiple public hearings that we have already conducted. We are going to conduct a couple of more public hearings, inshallah, within January, and maybe an additional roundtable as well before we actually move towards finalization. But the Sharia board by now has already reviewed the comments received, because there is a long standard and then there is a long list of comments received. We hope that the process will take like few more months before we are actually able to finalize this one. One thing that I can assure you, and that is my responsibility to assure, that every single comment received from the market is dealt on merit. Okay? Which means that even the commercial consideration, the Sharia consideration, the legal consideration, whatever point we receive, we take it to the Sharia board and we make sure that the Sharia board gives due due attention to every comment according to its significance. And this is my responsibility as Secretariat. After that, it is their responsibility, because again, they are very well understanding what is the need of the industry. They are very well understanding what have been and again, this is very important point, brother. Let me mention, although we need to close the discussion, but we need to mention this thing very important, that, in the initial days of Islamic finance, a lot of things are allowed based on necessity. But that necessity or need consideration need to be reassessed after every several years. You need to understand that point. So they also will consider to what extent the need is there and to what extent the need might not be or necessity might not be there. Again, this is purely their prerogative. But what they need to do is to see what is the Sharia requirement in this situation and to what extent the Sharia requirements here would allow a commercial consideration to be incorporated and to what extent a Sharia requirement would not be required. Brother, let me be honest. They are answerable to Allah Almighty. They all are, mashallah, pious people, very knowledgeable people, and they understand their responsibility towards the industry and towards the creator. They need to keep a balance in that in a way that they cannot do something which is not in Sharia. They cannot stand up and say, okay, we define new Sharia. Nobody is authorized to define new Sharia. Only thing is they need to re-evaluate those considerations in the light of what Sharia guidance is available and try to find out solutions if there is a solution. If there is no solution, obviously they will clearly say again in the final standard that yes, this is something where there is a red line. If you cross it, you are not Sharia compliant. This is again their responsibility. We are doing our responsibility. We highly appreciate all the comments received and we have forwarded it to them. They have already evaluated most of these comments, but we will be waiting for a couple of more public hearings and maybe a roundtable, not sure, but at least two more public hearings before they consider all comments and finalize it.
Fair enough. Brother Omar, as we close the podcast, tell us any projects you may be working on other than, say, Sharia Standard 62.
Brother, at this point of time, I think the most important thing that you might be finding is that in a couple of days, we'll be issuing the Sharia governance standards related to Sharia governance, Sharia supervisory board, etc. These are standards that are finalized. In last week, actually, we have within last few days, within last week, we have published already some of the exposure drafts and some final standards on financial accounting standards. A very important standard, which is again, our governance standard adoption level is less, but I would say that one of the best standards you will find is our Sharia decision making process governance standard. This is an excellent standard. This is also finalized in a couple of days, inshallah. Before end of the year, it will be on our website, inshallah. There is a very important standard on determination of that is exposure draft on determination of necessity for the purpose of obtaining conventional insurance in the takaful industry. That is a governance standard. That is a very important standard coming up. We will be coming up on some of the illustrative financial statement related guidelines on interim financial reporting. On the Sharia side, we have two very important standards, new exposure drafts that are there. That is, I'm not sure whether they are already on the website or not, but they are to be on the website shortly. One is on Ijara and that is revised Sharia standard on Ijara, and second is on Ijara Mawsufa Bizimma, which is new. There are several other standards on which we are working on the governance, accounting, and Sharia side. The whole, the spectrum of projects is like 27, 28 projects, so I cannot list them all down. We are more recently working significantly on fintech related some of the areas. So probably we'll be coming up with the standards on smart contracts. We are coming up on a standard on digital banking. We'll be coming up on open banking as well. A very important standard on the governance side is conversion standard. In some of the markets, we are having huge, a large number of conversions of conventional institutions to Islamic. So conversion governance standard is going to be one of the major projects that we are working on. So this is a very quick list of some of the things which are almost finalized or in the process. So within before end of the year, probably like 13, 14 exposure drafts and final standards will be coming up on our website. So I request everybody to have a look at it on probably in the first week of January when all of these are available.
Yeah, I'll link it in the show notes if you send it to me after. And Omar, what's the best way to reach you or AOFI?
You can always approach us if you have comments on the any of the standards. You can approach, or you want to approach the respective team. Accounting@aofi.com, governance@aofi.com, sharia@aofi.com. These are the common email addresses where you can approach us. Anybody want to approach me directly for any specific thing? I may always make my email address public. It is oansari@aofi.com. So you can always access to me if you need any specific query, any specific comment from my side.
Amazing. And you're also active on social media, right?
Yeah, you can always approach me on LinkedIn always.
Great. I'll link it in the show notes. But Omar Ansari, this has been a fantastic podcast and a fantastic interview and really insightful into the Islamic finance standing setting industry. And I wish you all the best for going into 2025, inshallah.
Thank you, Brother Hassan. Again, it was my pleasure and looking forward to meet you in person, inshallah, in future. Thank you again. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, inshallah.